So what is a Jew and what do we believe? Let's start off with the first question. What is Judaism? It can be described as a nationality or peoplehood. Judaism could be described as a religion. Judaism could be described as an ethnicity or a heritage. Or Judaism could be described as a way of life. Let's take a look at each of these as we go through and see where these different definitions stack up and where they fall short. Judaism as a nationality or peoplehood. What makes it possible to say Judaism is a people? We talk about the Jewish people, right? Well, we share a story of national origin. When we became a nation, we stood at Sinai, we all became a single group of people. We have special ties to a particular land, the land of Israel. We have a system of legal and decision-making structures. So, for example, we have rules within Judaism related to marriage and divorce. Those are legal structures that are common to a national peoplehood. We have shared national literature, music, art, etc. You can talk about Jewish art without necessarily talking about religious art. That's pretty significant. It's hard to talk about, you can't talk about Christian art unless you mean Christian religious art. You can't say somebody is a, Buddhist artist who doesn't deal with religious Buddhism, but you can say somebody is a Jewish artist who doesn't necessarily deal with Jewish topics. You can say somebody is a Jewish writer or a Jewish musician who might not be singing or playing music at all related to religious Judaism. We have cultural institutions like the World Zionist Organization that just had their big meeting, which concluded a couple weeks ago. Jewish community centers, Jewish National Fund. These are all institutions that don't have a religious basis. These are cultural institutions. So we have all of these different characteristics of a nationality or a peoplehood. There's also the most obvious example, which is the nation of Israel, which is a modern state that is designated as the home for the Jewish people. Anybody who is Jewish is eligible to become a citizen of Israel by national birthright. Let's talk about Judaism as a religion. This is probably a little bit easier to understand, a little bit more common. This is probably the first thing you think of when you think about Judaism for most of you, Judaism as a religion. Judaism professes a belief in God. Most religions profess some sort of belief in the divine. Judaism has holy texts and teachings, revelation. This is another common feature of religions. You have Christians have the Christian Bible, Muslims have the Quran, Hindus have their sacred texts that I won't embarrass myself by trying to pronounce right now. It's a common feature of religions. We have faith leaders. I am a rabbi. I am a faith leader in a community of faith. Just like you might have religions with priests or ministers or preachers, we have faith leaders in Judaism. We have a system of beliefs or a belief system. We have creeds, although maybe this is somewhat debatable. We don't have a single creed in Judaism that everybody universally agrees on, but we do have a system of beliefs in Judaism. We have prayers, holidays, and rituals that are distinctive to Judaism. These are all features that religions tend to share. And Judaism is exclusionary to other faiths. You can't be Jewish and Christian. You can't be Jewish and Hindu, at least according to most rabbis. Now, not every religion in the world has all of these features. Most religions have most of these features, and certainly Judaism has all of these that are listed here. I always, if you see me stopping to check my phone during any class or prayer service or anything like that, it's because I want to make sure that if there's a problem that someone wants to let me know about with the streaming or whatever, that I can address it immediately. It's not because I have, you know, more important things to do. So Judaism as an ethnic heritage. What defines an ethnicity? Having a unique language, check. We've got Hebrew. We also have, which has, you know, historically been the language of the Jewish people, exclusively the language of the Jewish people. We also have Yiddish and Ladino and other Jewish languages that are distinct and particular to the Jewish people. Ethnicities also are characterized by having a particular set of foods. There are Jewish foods. I mean, we've got matzah and tzimmus and bagels. We've got challah, shakshuka. Is anybody else getting hungry? Matzah ball soup, kugel, rugula, brisket. You've got Jewish pickles. You've got gefilte fish. You've got hummus, kibbeh, mufalada, and on and on and on. You've got, you know, distinctive Jewish foods. Does that mean we invented every single one of these foods? Does that mean that no other culture has shares any of these foods with us? No, all cultures have an exchange of different foods. You've got pasta from China and you've got pasta from Italy that are very different, but they share some characteristics. But we have a Jewish cuisine that's made up of all of these different foods and how they fit into our cultural heritage. You have Jewish cookbooks. I've never seen a Methodist cookbook. So you could learn distinctive Methodist foods, right? We have common cultural experiences. You know, all, you know, jokes about the Jewish mother aside, you know, we have particular experiences that are distinctive to our common culture. You know, well, I won't, most of the examples that come to my mind are tasteless jokes, so I'll skip the examples. Maybe another class we'll do a class just on Jewish humor and we can have a riot. We have a common shared identity, a cultural heritage identity, meaning we feel proud when one of our own does well, and we feel ashamed when one of our own does bad. When we see a Jewish singer winning a Grammy, we get very excited and say, oh, did you know that Drake is Jewish? That's very exciting. When, you know, a Jewish person becomes a Supreme Court justice, we get very excited. You know, oh, you know, look what we've done. On the other hand, when we see somebody in the news who's Jewish that's caught doing something they shouldn't do, they're embezzling or they're doing, you know, something else that they shouldn't be doing, we feel ashamed. We feel bad. We have this particular ties to that are shared among the people of the community. We have by and large, genetic commonalities and common ancestry. For decades and decades, a lot of researchers looked for patterns in Ashkenazi Jews because there are so many shared characteristics that Ashkenazi Jews were considered, among academics, a good population to do studies because there were so many genetic similarities that you could use that as a control for other things. Modern genetic studies that look at history have found that there are shared genetic histories among Ashkenazi Jews, Sephardic Jews, and also among Palestinians, and Lebanese, that there are Levantine genetic markers in most Jews. We have, again, similar to being a nation, we also have traditional music, dance, humor, etc., that are tend to be markers of an ethnic heritage. If you look at any ethnic group, these are the qualifiers that define a group of people as an ethnic group. You could also define Judaism as a way of life or a practice. Judaism consists of a system of values. You've got dietary practices, kashrut, right? We have daily and weekly schedule. There are certain things that we are supposed to do and certain things that we are not supposed to do as Jews. Certain practices, Shabbat, having a day off. We have musar, which is spiritual discipline. So just like you could say maybe Buddhism is a way of life, or yoga is a way of life, or Orange Theory fitness is a way of life, you can say Judaism is also a way of life. It's a prescription for how to live your day-to-day life and make day-to-day decisions. Judaism is also none or all of the above. So for example, nationality or peoplehood. In what ways is Judaism not like a nationality or peoplehood? Well, there's a lot of diversity in Judaism. There are many Jews who don't feel any special connection to the land of Israel. Those are distinctive features of a national group. You could say Judaism is not necessarily a religion because you have plenty of Jews that consider themselves cultural Jews. They don't follow any particular religious teachings of Judaism, but they still consider themselves Jewish, and they're considered Jewish by the majority of the Jewish world. You've got the phenomena of Jew-boos, Jews who practice Buddhism rather than Judaism, but they are culturally, and according to most of the Jewish world, they're still Jews. There's also, you don't have to believe in God to be a Jew. A Jew who doesn't believe in God is still considered Jewish. How can you be an atheist Jew? You ever heard of an atheist Christian? I haven't. I don't know what that would look like. But an atheist Jew is something that's totally possible. What about an ethnicity or a heritage? Well, there are, I just lost my notes. There are, Jews can be white, black, Hispanic. You can have a whole range of different ethnicities within the Jewish community. We also have the issue that race theory in general, which originally defined Jews as a race or ethnicity, is really based on junk science. There is no scientific difference between one race or ethnicity and another. This has been demonstrated many, many times over. And it's that junk science, from the time when races were defined by, measuring the size of skulls and mandibles and the ratio of this bone to that bone. That was state of the art 100 years ago. That was, we thought we had it all figured out. Now we've got genetic studies and we think, oh, we've got, your 22% Irish and 11% German and 5%, South African, whatever these studies, again, we think we've got it all figured out, but the genetic studies actually don't seem to define anything that's scientifically distinct between groups of people. And in fact, that type of harmful thinking is what led to the Holocaust and all these terrible tragedies based on racism. You could also say Judaism is not necessarily a way of life or practice, because there are many Jews that are ethnically and culturally and religiously Jewish that don't follow the strict code of halakha. You don't have to keep kosher to be Jewish. Now, there's a word for this type of thing. Judaism is whatever it is seems to defy definition, because we both are and aren't a nationality. We both are and aren't a religion. We are and aren't an ethnicity or a way of life. So what is Judaism? The best word that I have found that describes Judaism, it's not a new word, it's certainly not something that I came up with. Judaism is a tribe. In fact, my dad tells me, they used to say, are you a member of the tribe? Or do you like Mott's applesauce? That was like their code word that he and his friends would use when they met someone. M-O-T-T, right? The applesauce brand, member of the tribe. That was their secret code in school for, oh, are you Jewish? Judaism is a tribe. A tribe fits all of these things and defies all of these things in the same way that Judaism does. So we've got what Judaism is and is not. Who decides who's a Jew? This is the next big question. Now that maybe we kind of know what Judaism is, I don't know if we've defined it very well or just added more confusion. A lot of these classes will be like that. I hope to give you more questions by the end than you have at the beginning. If I haven't done that, I'm not doing my job. So who decides who is a Jew? Well, there are different ways. Traditional halakha has one definition. According to traditional halakha, halakha meaning Jewish law, somebody is Jewish if they are born to a Jewish mother or they convert. Those are the only two ways that a person is considered Jewish in traditional halakha. And they are all inclusive. If you meet one of these requirements, then you are Jewish. If you do not meet one of these requirements, then you are not Jewish. It's a very black and white definition, which means you cannot un-Jew yourself. If you have a Jewish mother, according to halakha, and you go on to become, you convert to Christianity, you become a priest in the church, you're still considered Jewish. You're just an apostate Jew. You're a Jew who rejected the religious teachings, but you are still considered a Jew. If on the other hand, you convert to Judaism, and then you later decide Judaism is not for me, you convert to another religion, you're still considered Jewish. You've become an apostate Jew who's adopted another religion. If you're born to a Jewish mother according to halakha and you never heard about Judaism, you never learned a thing about it, maybe you're a total agnostic or atheist, you're still considered a Jew according to halakha. That's not the only definition of Judaism. Modern halakha, pioneered in the Reform movement, but recognized across multiple movements. We'll get into more of that detail in a future class when we break down what are the different movements in Judaism and what does that mean. For now, we're just going to call it modern halacha. According to modern halacha, somebody is Jewish if they are born to a Jewish parent and raised in a Jewish household and practice Judaism exclusively. If you don't meet these three requirements, you're not considered Jewish in modern halacha. An interesting offshoot of this is, number one, there are many people who are considered Jewish in a Reform congregation or other congregation that recognizes this modern halacha, that are not considered Jewish in an Orthodox, traditional halacha observant congregation. For example, somebody who was born to an interfaith family with a non-Jewish mother and a Jewish father, even if they are raised as a Jew, even if Judaism is the only thing they've ever known, even if they didn't know their mother, they're not considered Jewish according to the traditional halachic definition, but they would be considered Jewish according to this modern halachic understanding. Conversely, if somebody has a Jewish mother, but they've never observed Judaism, or they have followed another religion throughout their lifetime, then they would not be considered Jewish in modern halacha, but they would be considered Jewish according to traditional halacha. The state of Israel has its own separate definition of what is a Jew. According to the law of return, somebody who is Jewish is somebody who is halachically Jewish, according to the traditional halacha, or have one or more Jewish grandparents, or have converted in a recognized synagogue. We'll talk in a later session about what a recognized synagogue versus not a recognized synagogue might be. And, in capital letters, one of these three qualifiers, and not practicing another religion. There was a famous case of Father Daniel Rufisian, I think I pronounced his name wrong, but if you Google Father Daniel, you'll be able to find it, who was a Polish priest in the Catholic Church who was viewed himself as ethnically Jewish, who fled Poland due to anti-Semitism and sought citizenship in Israel under the right of return, under the law of return. in the 1970s, but he was denied Israeli citizenship on the basis that he was a Catholic priest and he was not eligible for being recognized as Jewish under the law of return. He later received He later was able to receive Israeli citizenship through residency. All right, and I see someone in the conversion group is asking for the Zoom link on in our group message. Would somebody who's on that group message send the link? I'm not able to do it right now. So who is Jewish depends on who you ask. So ultimately, here's the question: who is a Jew? And who gets to decide who is a Jew? The best answer that I have come across in all of my studies is simply this: either you stood at Sinai or you didn't. Either you have a Jewish neshama, you have a Jewish soul, or you don't. And if you have a Jewish soul, all that I can do as a rabbi is to teach and nurture that Jewish soul, to bring it out so that it is expressed in the fullest way possible. And I can determine according to a halachic standard, official endorsement of your Judaism. But at the end of the day, it's between you and God. Either you stood at Sinai or you didn't. I'm going to pause for just a moment before we talk about basic Jewish beliefs to see if there are any questions from the group at this time.
Rabbi, this is Alter. A person like me, whose mother was not Jewish, but my father was a Jew. Obviously, my father's parents were Jewish, both of them.
Yes.
What am I?
It depends on who you ask. By the way, I'm in just the same boat. My mother is now Jewish, but she converted after I was born. When I went to a conservative synagogue, they told me in order to be recognized, I had to go to the mikveh. So I went to the mikveh, and they gave me a certificate. So now I'm a Jew according to the Reformed synagogue and the conservative synagogue. If I wanted to go to an Orthodox synagogue, they would probably ask for something else, even though I'm a rabbi. I'm the most Jewish person I know. But still, under some definitions of Judaism, I would have to defend myself as a Jew. But you know what? My soul stood at Sinai. I'm one of the Jewish people. Judaism is in my soul. It's in my bones. It's in my kishkas, you know? I've never been anything but Jewish in my entire life. So, you know, I stood at Sinai. You know, what does it matter if, you know, somebody out there has what I would consider an outdated and possibly incorrect opinion about what qualifies someone as a Jew? I'm not saying that it doesn't have any merit whatsoever, but at least for me, I know what I am. I have no confusion about whether or not I'm Jewish. Which is why I say ultimately, it's not up to me as a rabbi to tell you whether or not you're Jewish, although, you know, I do have that authority in an official capacity to say, okay, this person, you know, qualifies as Jewish through conversion, or this person, you know, qualifies as Jewish through, you know, something else. You know, that's sort of in an official capacity to make that determination. But, you know, what determines if someone is a Jew? That's between your soul and God. That's the best answer that I've found in my life, because there are, you know, different definitions. These are the three most prominent, most important definitions. They're not the only ones, but I think that this covers probably 90% of the perspectives out there.
Yeah, same type of thing, you know, even in Christianity, like you know, Catholics, you know, will not accept Protestant Christians as being, you know, official either, unless they go through their conversion, and even Protestant denominations will, you know, not necessarily recognize each other too. So it exists out there, not just in Judaism, but in other faiths too. So.
Yeah. Every religion has some sort of boundary, you know, this person is in and this person is out. I'm of the opinion that having some system of clearly defined boundaries is beneficial to having no system. And there are religions that have no system. You know, how does somebody qualify as a Buddhist? You know, they decide to call themselves a Buddhist, you know, that then you've got, you know, who is a saved Christian. That applies to a number of different, you know, evangelical movements. Who qualifies as a saved Christian? When you say, I've been saved, you know, so how do you really determine who is or is not part of the religion? That's an important question. And I think it becomes relevant at some point in the conversation. Having a system, even having more than one system or a system that doesn't have total agreement, having some system of determining who is a Jew, I think is better than not having a system at all, even though we know ultimately that it's not up to that system to determine a person's Jewishness. Really, only God can make that determination.
I have a question, and I'm also confused by the three different forms that you have. Like when I wrote you the note, I have a brother. We were both raised the same way. He married a non-Jewish spouse, and he kind of observes the Passover and the holiday for the family, but not really practicing Jew. But according to the modern, would it be considered not a Jew because he's not really practicing, or just does, I'm really confused. Do you have to follow all three, or do you just follow the traditional or one? I'm just really confused by it all.
The answer here, who decides who is a Jew, it depends on who you ask. So I follow, as a Reform rabbi, I follow modern halacha. Somebody who meets these this category of requirements, I consider a Jew in official capacity. Or of course, somebody who converts. I don't know why that should also be on there. Born to a Jewish parent, raised in a Jewish household, practice Judaism exclusively, or somebody who converts. So that's, whoever put these slides together left that off. Bad rabbi. Okay. So somebody who meets those requirements is considered formally, officially Jewish by me. So since you're asking me, that's my answer. What are the basic Jewish beliefs? We believe in one God. A part of believing in one God means that there is no anti-God. I once heard a rabbi say, what does it mean to be Jewish? What is the Jewish theology? Every Jew must believe in one or fewer gods. Because again, it is possible to be a Jewish atheist, but we're talking about what are the basic, we're not getting into all of the nuance of all of these beliefs. What are the basic beliefs of Judaism? Belief in one God. That means there's no anti-God. In Judaism, there is no God versus the devil, for example. That's dualism, or Gnosticism. You can choose how big of a word you want to, how impressive you want people to be with your vocabulary. Judaism believes there's one God. That is the only ultimate force in the universe. There's also one life, meaning there is no specific creed of the afterlife that is the Jewish creed of afterlife. We will, in a later class, talk about what happens when we die, and there are different Jewish beliefs about the afterlife, which I won't list right now. Just know that there are different beliefs, and we'll talk about them in the future. But Judaism is focused on this life. One life to live. Wasn't that an old soap opera? Anybody remember that? You've got one life to live. Like sands in the hourglass, so are the days of our lives. Right? What we do in this life is what's significant to Judaism. We don't do things with an afterlife in mind. We don't need an excuse to be a good person. We believe in Torah. That's the Jewish teachings beginning with the 5 books of Moses, but not ending there. That's just the written Torah. There's also the oral Torah, which are teachings that are passed from one person to another over over time. Many of the teachings of the oral Torah are written down in the Talmud, in the Midrash, and in other sources as well, in the Zohar. But all of this knowledge is what composes Torah. It's this culmination of Jewish knowledge that we believe in. And we believe about Torah that it is in some way of divine origin. There is a range about what that means. How do you define divine origin? But we believe that the Torah is our ultimate guide for life, the universe, and everything. There are 613 mitzvot. We have commandments that we are meant to follow. We have guidelines that we are meant to follow as Jews. We might disagree about the authority of some of these 613. We might disagree about which ones are binding in present day and which ones are not, but we all agree that Judaism contains obligations. There are certain things that we are meant to do, we are supposed to do. We are obligated to do by our faith directly from God. However you define God, however you define obligation. All of this is a way to say that what you do and say matters to God. That is fundamental to Jewish belief. We also have Jewish prayers and Jewish holidays. These are communal gatherings, communal prayers that we join together with others. We join in a minyan. We join together for study like we are now, which is also part of Torah. That these practices are part and parcel of being Jewish. We have Jewish values that define how one should make decisions about right and wrong in one's life. And we have particular beliefs about the role of synagogue and home. That in Judaism, the synagogue, which is actually a Greek word, which means gathering place. The Hebrew word for synagogue is Beit Knesset, which is the same meaning, literally house of gathering, Beit Knesset. That there is a role of gathering together for prayer, that there is something sacred about gathering together and having a holy place. And there is also a sacred role of the home. There are certain mitzvot that you can only fulfill in your own home. For example, lighting a menorah. It's considered meritorious to light a menorah at a synagogue and also at home, but the obligation is to light one in your home during Hanukkah. There is a special role of the sacredness of the Jewish home. I'm going to pause there again for any questions before we get into what is Judaism and what do we believe. There are a few different ideas. There is no singular Jewish creed that you can say this is what Jews believe, but there are different rabbis and different figures over the course of history who have written great interpretations on what the most important part or parts of Judaism consists of. No questions? We'll move on.
Would it be fair to say then that, you're comparing, like Reform versus, other branches, that Reform tends to be more open to the idea of there being different people in the community that may hold different views about different things, and that's perfectly fine. Whereas maybe in a Orthodox, they're more like, no, it's just this one way.
I think it depends a lot on the individual community. I know plenty of Orthodox shuls where there's a lot of diversity. I mean, there are expectations of practice that if you're Orthodox, you're expected that you're keeping a kosher home, that you're keeping Shabbat according to the Orthodox interpretation of the 39 categories of work. So there are certain expectations that are expected to be shared across the board. But I wouldn't necessarily say that it's more rigid in terms of belief. There are some Orthodox communities that are more rigid in terms of belief, especially when you look at the ultra-Orthodox world. The Haredi world is more directed by, there are expectations about what you think and believe in some Haredi ultra-Orthodox communities. But there are also, Reform communities that are not as tolerant as at least the leadership of the Reform movement preaches we should be. That there are synagogues where if you walk in wearing, talit katan, tzitzit bachutz, like Victor here, not to pick on Victor, there are Reform synagogues, if you walked in, that he would be made to feel very unwelcome for, wearing a talit katan, which if you're not familiar is very traditional Jewish dress that's not common, I can say it's uncommon in Reform synagogues. So I guess my answer is yes and no.
That's good. That answers it.
Is that a good Jewish answer?
Yeah.
Yes, but also no.
Yes and no.
I would like to believe that Reform Jewish communities are more tolerant and more diverse. That certainly is the case in many Reform Jewish congregations that I've been a part of. And I know that is also the case in many Orthodox synagogues. I believe that it is a universal positive, a universal good for the Jewish people to have more diversity. There's an old joke in Judaism. If you've got 2 Jews in a room, you've got 3 opinions. Some people say, if you've got 2 Jews in the room, you've got 10 opinions. Different versions of the same joke, which of course only goes to prove the fact that it's true. We can't even agree on what the correct punchline is. There is a celebration of diverse opinion in Judaism in general, across the board. I think that there is a fundamental appreciation for civilized disagreement. Elu Devarim. This comes from the Talmud, from Eruvin, and from the Mishnah. And it also, this particular translation, in fact, comes right out of our prayer book. So I think I have here, straight out of the Mishkan Tefillah prayer book. Never more than 10 feet away from a Tanakh and a prayer book. This particular translation comes right from there. Elu Devarim, these are the things that are limitless, of which a person enjoys the fruit of the world while the principle remains in the world to come. What does it mean, limitless? It means without measure. These are commandments that you cannot say, okay, I've completed the commandment. They are always in the process of completion. Also limitless in the sense of the good that they do for the world is considered limitless. They are. How can it be the principle remains in the world to come if we don't have a Jewish creed about what happens after we die? Well, it all depends on what the world to come means. That'll be again in another class. You see, you got to keep coming back, get all the good stuff. We get some good stuff now, and some we gotta wait. That's a teaser. That's just good marketing, right? They are honoring one's father and mother, engaging in deeds of compassion, arriving early for study morning and evening, dealing graciously with guests, visiting the sick, providing for the wedding couple, accompanying the dead for burial, being devoted in prayer and making peace among people. But the study of Torah encompasses them all. By the way, speaking of good marketing, that's good marketing for Judaism, right? Speaking of good marketing, I want to take just a moment to say, if you are taking this class for the purposes of conversion, make sure that either you have paid in full in the near future, or that you've talked to me about it to work out a particular arrangement. If you haven't done one of those things, then do one of them. Call me up or make the payment. If you are taking this class not for the purposes of conversion, there is no fee for the class, but there is always, we are always accepting donations. If you would like to make a donation to the general fund, you can do that on the website. Go to temple-emmanuel.com, click on donate and payments. You can make a donation there. It's traditional. There's, I think, a beautiful Jewish tradition of making a donation in increments of $18. So that would be $18 or $36 for a donation. 18 being significant because it's connected with the Hebrew word chai, which means life. So you're connecting your life, saying the donation is not just financial, but it has some spiritual significance as well. We also, for the folks who are, especially for the folks who are joining us from out of the Valley, we do have now a associate membership. If you would like to support the community in general, let me know and we can get more information about becoming an associate member if you're not able to become a full member of the temple. That's the end. Even even when you watch free TV shows, they've got the ad in the middle, right? The world rests on three things. This is another sort of pithy manifesto about what Judaism is all about. Al shlosha devarim ha'olam omed al ha'torah ve'al ha'avodah ve'al gemilut chasadim. Shimon the Just, or Simon the Just, used to say, the world stands upon three things: on the Torah, on service, and on acts of loving kindness. According to Shimon the Just, this was the essence of what Judaism has to offer the world. This quote, by the way, is from part of the Mishnah, which is called Pirkei Avot, which usually you would see spelled Pirkei space Avot, translated variously as Ethics of the Fathers or Chapters of the Fathers. If you are interested in, what are Jewish ethics, it is a great place to start. You can find it all online. You can find it on Sefaria, which is a great website. You can find it on a number of other websites. If you type in Pirkei Avot, you'll be able to find it in Hebrew and English very easily. It's a great place to start in understanding Jewish ethics. If you feel like you're still puzzled, what is Judaism all about? You've got the greatest rabbis of each generation in the early rabbinic period talking about what they think are the most important teachings they have to offer. If you have at home, by the way, Gates of Prayer, that's the old, before the Mishkan Tefillah. I don't have Gates of Prayer here. It's back at the office. If you, before the book that was before this one was called Gates of Prayer. And in the back of Gates of Prayer has a lot, not all, but a lot of Pirkei Avot, a lot of teachings of the fathers. I forget how they translate it there. It's a great source for reading about inspiring Jewish ethical teachings. Our rabbis taught, this is from the Talmud, deeds of loving kindness, gemilut chasadim. Remember, Shimon the Just said, the world stands on three things. The Torah, the teaching, the service, meaning the temple service or worship service or service to humankind. Probably he meant the former more than the latter. And acts of loving kindness, gemilut chasadim. Our rabbis taught, gemilut chasadim, deeds of loving kindness, are superior to charity in three respects. Charity can be accomplished only with money. Deeds of loving kindness can be accomplished through personal involvement as well as with money. Charity can be given only to the poor. Deeds of loving kindness, gemilut chasadim, can be done for both rich and poor. Charity applies only to the living. Deeds of loving kindness apply both to the living and the dead. In Judaism, it is a great mitzvah to be able to give to someone who has died because they are no longer in a position to return that gift. We can continue to do good for somebody even after they have died. But what does it mean to give charity? The Jewish word for charity is tzedakah, the Hebrew word. Tzedakah literally means justice or righteousness. It's not about charity, and we'll cover this more in the future when we talk about some Jewish ethics in more detail. Tzedakah is not about charity. It's not giving out of the goodness of your heart. It's about making the world more just and fair. That's why the word is connected with justice and fairness. It's the right thing to do. It's not that you are so generous and benevolent. It's that we are obligated to take care of one another. Tzedakah is a commandment. It's not optional. It's not, wow, look at what a great person you are. You gave a lot of tzedakah. It's an expectation. It's one of those 613 commandments to give tzedakah. Maimonides, who is a great Jewish scholar who lived almost 1,000 years ago, excuse me, developed, based on Jewish teachings, developed a ladder of tzedakah. The lowest or simplest form of tzedakah is the person who gives reluctantly and with regret. So you give money, but only because you feel like you have to. Or maybe somebody sort of, catches you in a position where you don't feel like you have an option. So you're like, okay, I'll toss in $1. Someone's going around the office and everybody but you gave to this charity. Everyone gave for my kid's fun run except for you. Okay, maybe you feel guilty and okay, I'll put in $1. You still get credit for the tzedakah. It's still tzedakah. It's still a good deed. You're still fulfilling the mitzvah, but you're fulfilling it in the least ideal way. Next is somebody who gives graciously, but less than one should. Tzedakah is supposed to be, you're supposed to be able to feel it. If you haven't given up anything, if you give so little that it doesn't affect your lifestyle at all, then you could probably give a little bit more. I mean, at all. You don't have to put yourself into the poorhouse. In fact, you're forbidden to give so much that you yourself then rely on tzedakah. It's forbidden to give away everything you own in the Jewish understanding of tzedakah. But maybe you're very generous. I give $1 to the fellow who's on the corner every single day out of the window of my what's a really expensive car. I'm a rabbi. I don't know. BMW. What's a Bentley? Bentley, that's a good one. Out of the window of my Bentley, I like Bentleys. I think they're a very attractive car. I will never own one. Out of the window of my Bentley, I give $1 to the fellow on the corner every day. That's $300 a year. You could probably do a little bit more. 365. The next higher rung of tzedakah, the person who gives what one should, but only after being asked. So you do give what you're supposed to, but you're waiting around for someone to come and ask you. I'll admit I'm guilty of myself this sometimes. I've got my list of charities, and sometimes until I get that letter or the phone call, I'm like, oh yeah, I meant to make that donation. So that's an area where I need to do a little bit better. So you give what you can, what you're supposed to, but only after being asked. Of course, a little bit better than that is somebody who gives before being asked. You don't even have to ask. You just give the tzedakah. One rung better than that on Maimonides' ladder is somebody who gives without knowing whom he or she is giving to, although the recipient knows the identity of the donor. So this is, I put my money into a foundation and I say, give this money to whatever charity or whatever individual needs it the most. And then people who receive the money can say, oh, well, what a great person, they donated this money to help me. But you don't necessarily know who it's going to. There's a famous story in the Talmud of a rabbi who would cut a hole in his pocket so that change would slowly fall out. As he was walking through town, coins would drop out, so people who were poor could pick up the coins behind him, and he would never see who they were. So that's good. He didn't know who he was giving to, but they knew who was giving the money. Better than that is somebody who gives without making his or her identity known. You give an anonymous gift, that's better than to a charity. That's better than receiving the recognition. Why do you think that might be? Actually, hold on to that question. We're gonna do one more before we get to there. There are 8 rungs on the ladder. I'm gonna pause between 7 and 8 to ask some questions. Number 7 makes sense. Somebody who gives without knowing to who you're giving, and you're giving it anonymously. You don't know who you're giving it to, and the person who's getting it doesn't know who gave it. So let me pause here. Why do you think it might be the case that that's considered a higher rung on the ladder of tzedakah, a preferable form of giving than those that are lower? Who has a thought?
Because they can only thank God.
I don't know who said that.
Mark Hernandez. I'm always frozen or I'm in the black.
Okay.
And I can never really, I see everybody else and everybody else moves, but like I'm frozen with my hand touching my face and my pen in my hand.
Okay.
So I really don't know if anybody sees me, but I'm here.
What I see is just a black screen.
And what I see is a frozen.
No funny faces.
Okay, I see a frozen, me frozen. So
I don't know.
But back to the answer is.
To the question, yeah.
Or the question was that they can only thank God. They can't thank you.
Yeah, I think that that's a beautiful way of understanding it, that you're involving God at these levels because that's the only source of thanks a person can give. So you're involving God in a greater degree than at one of these sort of lower levels. I know the ladder is like upside down. I'm talking about the lower levels and the higher levels, but okay.
I think it's a matter of trust too, trusting in God that the right thing's going to be done with the money, and you don't know that, but you're trusting somebody to make sure that the right thing happens with it.
Yeah, there's an act of trust there, that you're saying, I'm putting this donation out into the world. I don't know who's going to receive it, but I know it's going to someone who needs it, and they won't know where it's coming from, so I have no way of finding out in the future.
I think it also has to do with being grateful for the actual mitzvah instead of being grateful for the person. When you don't know who it's coming from, you're grateful for what you receive as opposed to grateful for the person.
Yeah, I don't know. Oh, there you are. I don't have everyone on my screen at the same time, so I'm searching for who's talking. Yeah, it's a matter of expressing gratitude. It's also a matter of receiving recognition. If you give something and you expect something in return, that diminishes the gift, right? If you only give something expecting something in return, how much is it a gift and how much is it, a purchase, an investment, right?
For the recipient, it avoids, any shame in it, to be like, oh, well, this person's giving me this money, they're just getting the money, like somebody else said earlier, and they can just be thankful to God that somebody gave them money, but without having to have that connection, or shame or whatever.
Yeah, there's a matter of human dignity here as well. All right, now the big question is, what is the highest rung? There's one more rung that's considered higher than all of these.
The ability to give somebody the means of creating their own wealth.
That's good. Have you seen this before?
No.
You just intuited that. You're exactly right.
Yeah,
the highest rung of charity that you can give, according to Maimonides, is offering a loan or a job, giving somebody the ability to become self-supporting, or gifts, so that somebody no longer has to rely on tzedakah. That is the highest form of giving that you can do, the highest form of charity. You would think, isn't it better to give someone a gift rather than to give them a loan? No, it's actually better to give someone a loan that enables them, not a predatory loan, obviously, but a loan which enables them to start a business, to get back on their feet, to become self-sufficient, or just as good giving somebody a job or giving somebody a gift in a way that they can become self-sufficient on their own, so they no longer have to rely on tzedakah.
That's kind of what I've done in what I do for a living, is to be able to teach the guys to do what it is that I do, so that one day they can do it on themselves, do it on their own, and be able to supply for their families, and to be able to give to the charity of their choice.
Yeah. The ability to give to charity is something powerful. And in fact, it is a mitzvah. It's a commandment. We're obligated to give tzedakah. This leads to a very interesting feature of Jewish law relating to tzedakah, which we find in Talmud. If you wanted to look up where it is, Gittin 7b is the location in the Talmud. And the quote is this: Mar Zutra says, even a poor person who received tzedakah must give from what he receives. Are you surprised by this? Because tzedakah is an obligation. Every single person is responsible for these mitzvot, is responsible for these obligations, just like it's required for every person to go to synagogue and pray, every Jewish person, right? In the same sense, it's required of every Jewish person to give to tzedakah, even if you're the one receiving tzedakah. Is anybody astonished by that? The first time I heard this, I couldn't believe it. I was like blown back.
Yeah.
It
It
gives
makes-
an
It gives them an opportunity to pay forward what they've, they received the assistance, and it gives them that opportunity to be able to pay it forward, even if it's just a little bit,
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. My grandmother always taught me that it wasn't the amount, but it was the act.
Sure. There's an active dignity here, and I found in my life some of the most generous people that I've known are the people who are the most hard up in their own lives. Maybe there's a greater appreciation for how much it's needed. Maybe it's just something, it's not universal. I've known many generous people who are also very wealthy. And I've known many stingy people who, didn't have a dime to their name. But, still wouldn't, the phrase is, wouldn't spit on you if you were on fire.
Yeah.
Excuse me. But I think there's something to that. There's the dignity of being able to give tzedakah as well. All right, changing gears a little bit here for the very end of this teaching. What do Jews believe? This is one of my favorite and probably one of the most famous teachings about what is it that Jews believe. What is Judaism all about? How can you sum it up? Well, that's exactly the situation that a couple of rabbis living in the first century ran into. This is, again, it's from the Babylonian Talmud from Shabbat 31a, if you want to look it up and sort of see a little bit more. It's a very fun section, by the way. There was once a Gentile who came before Shammai. Shammai was like the head, the major rabbi, or one of the two major rabbis of the time, and said to him, "Convert me on the condition that you teach me the entire Torah while standing on one foot." Some translations say he's asking Shammai to stand on one foot. Some translations say, no, he was going to stand on one foot. What does that mean? If you're standing on one foot, you can't talk very long, right? It's every rabbi's nightmare. Teach me the entire Torah while standing on one foot. Shammai chased him off with a measuring stick that he was holding. Now, get out of here, you rabble rouser. You're trying to make me look like a fool. Who knows what he was thinking? Chased the guy off with a stick. Same fellow came before Hillel. Hillel was the other big rabbi of the time. And in fact, Hillel, as time has gone on, became even more famous and more well-known and more respected than Shammai. At the time, they were equals. But over the course of his life, Hillel became the more respected. And in fact, in time, the halakha came, the Jewish law came to follow the rulings of Hillel. Hillel said to this same offer, convert me to Judaism on the condition that you teach me the whole Torah while standing on one foot. Hillel said to him, that which is despicable to you, do not do to your fellow. That's the whole Torah. Everything else is commentary. Now go and learn it.